Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sandy Frank's political podcast for a people's revolution against the corporate fascist state. I am your host, Sandy Frank, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but we're mainly going to be talking about, in this episode, United States foreign policy, and how United States foreign policy, it's business in the Middle East. We'll center this around the terrorists. We'll call it a suicide bombing in Pakistan, killing, I believe, 77 people, and the frenzy and the sensationalism that has come out of the corporate media on both sides of the corporate fascist media. The MSNBCs and the Breitbarts are both, sensationalizing what's happened here and drawing all made up conclusions about what it means. So today we really want to explain this point very as in many different ways as we can. We want to say that this quote unquote terrorism that goes on, suicide bombings happen all over the world, and as ever long there's been bombs, there have been quote unquote terrorist attacks, from political terrorists, religious terrorists, all different types of terrorists. We want to understand that there's
in 1,000 feet, exit right.
Sorry, I just got the directional on here, but we want to talk about how Islam and terrorism have basically nothing to do with each other, and we want to point out that terrorism and the types of criminal cases that we see happen in Pakistan have everything to do with United States foreign policy. So terrorism has everything to do with the United States intervention and the bombings and the displacement and the fear and the terror that the real terrorists, the United States government and the United States military, put into the hearts of the people of these nations. A lot of people in the West like to make the nonsense point that the Middle East is somehow uncivilized, and we in the West are civilized, when in reality it's the West who are the ones who are waging all of the terror and creating all of the terror in the world through militarization and occupation. And we know from any historical example that when the United States goes into all of these countries and occupies and invades and drains the resources and lies and says they're doing it for democracy, when the United States of America doesn't even have a fucking democracy in its own nation. When the U.S. does these things, though, when they go to these countries and invade and occupy and murder and bomb children and kill them, that is the creator of things like what we saw in Pakistan. Islam and people practicing their religion has nothing to do with what happened in Pakistan whatsoever. And Islamophobes in the West will completely lie and completely spread lies about Islam, about how people practicing some religion, this is the thing that creates terrorism. Let's just look at another example in history of Ireland and the British occupation of Ireland, when there was a lot of bombings and killings in Ireland. No one was blaming Christianity or radical Christianity for the bombings in Ireland. Because it's such a nonsensical point, because everyone knows that there was terrorism committed against the British in Ireland because of occupation and invasion, and the British murdering and colonializing for all of time. We see very clearly that the patterns here, they would try to blame the Irish terrorism on politics, and they try to blame the terrorism and the suicide bombing in Pakistan on religion, Islam. When we know in all of these cases of terrorism, terrorism is coming from the aggressor, which in this case is the United States. Terrorism is coming from the people who are invading these countries and murdering millions and slaughtering innocent children and creating the conditions of poverty. And that's another big point that we need to make about terrorism in the Middle East, quote unquote terrorism in the Middle East. It has very little to do with Islam and has so much to do with poverty. And the systems of government that Middle Eastern nations have set up. And we have to look at the facts and realize that this radical this suicide bombing terrorism in the Middle East is not some sort of common historical trait. It's weird that the terrorism so-called in these countries really escalated within the last 50 years. These countries before then, the Middle East has ruled the world and been the leading superpower in the world for so many times throughout history. But now we see a great poverty and these countries not having very much money happening over the last 50 years, and it just so happens to be the same period of time. And we're talking about the Middle East and Africa and other parts of the world not having less and less money. But we're talking about the connection between the growth of the United States imperialist state and the decline of all of these other non-Western nations. Iran used to have a democracy, and then of course the CIA overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran and replaced it with religious fundamentalists. So we see very clearly, especially in the Middle East, that all of the poverty and all of the crime and all of the destitution that we see has happened over the past 50 or so years. we see that the United States has had an influence on all of these governments and all of these elections and all of these toppling of democratic regimes. And of course, we don't just see the United States doing this in the Middle East, all over South America and Central America, all throughout Eastern Europe, all throughout Africa, all throughout the Middle East, all throughout Asia, all throughout Europe, and all throughout the United States itself. We see the the manipulation of elections, the toppling of democratically elected governments to be replaced with the radical and fundamentalist governments that the United States helped prop up in Saudi Arabia and Iran and everywhere, folks. So we see very clearly that this quote-unquote terrorism in the Middle East was invented by the United States and the West to fearmonger to the public and to allow war industrialists to go into these countries and kill everyone and say that they believe in democracy and say that they're trying to help these people, when in reality they're just trying to profit off the war machine. That's all that's happening here, folks. That's all that's happening when the United States invades countries, and when the United States finances the Saudis and the Israelis and all of these other violent Islamophobic regimes. So we see very clearly that this quote-unquote radical Islam is nothing but a marketing ploy set up by the United States government. And we see quote-unquote terrorism all over the world. We see in Canada the shooting of the mosque by the white nationalist. We see that act of terror, but we don't automatically go and invade Canada. And when you look at it proportionally, adjusted to what the United States has done to all of these countries in the Middle East and other countries around the world, if you look at it proportionally, the crime rate is in proportion. Of course, adjusting for the poverty and the fundamentalist regimes that the United States has installed, and the very occupation from the United States itself. When we adjust for the United States' bloody influence on these nations, of course, the crime rate, which is what we really need to look at it as the crime rate, and start looking at terrorism as crime rather than something to profit the war machine off of. The reason that there aren't huge bombings in the United States at the rates there are in certain Middle Eastern countries, and we'll talk about false flag attacks later on in the program, but just for the sake of argument, let's pretend the rate of suicide bombing crime in the Middle East, and we're trying to look at it in comparison to the United States. Again, the reason why there aren't these kind of big criminal events in the United States is it because of when the Boston bombers bombed Boston? Did the United States invade Massachusetts and carpet bomb Brookline and carpet bomb Watertown? No. What happened when there was the Boston bombings? Of course, the United States responded with a rational, well, we won't say rational, but they responded with a police force, not bombing and ridiculous $1 trillion war campaigns for profit. No. That's the point of a police force is for domestic crime. And when you have that type of domestic crime being committed in Pakistan, of course the answer to apprehending those types of criminals for, those that there may be that are actual suicide bombers in Pakistan, the only way to stop it from happening is giving Pakistan the means for a democratically elected government and an effective police force, like some part of the United States has, to apprehend the people who will come together and try to form and try to commit these acts of mass murder. And again, we'll get to false flag attacks later on in the program, but there was just so much of this going around on social media today after this this story came out about lies about Islam, about how Pakistan and the murder in Pakistan has anything to do with the religion of these people, and has everything to do with the fact that these people are subjugated by the United States. They are abused by the United States. They are invaded and occupied and slaughtered all around the Middle East by the United States. And this is what creates terrorism. And the people in the United States government at the top who are pushing for these campaigns, and the people who run our government in the war machine and in the defense industry, they know this. They know that they're just profiting off of lies about terrorism. They know that they are profiting off of the fact that Dick Cheney and the CIA scared the entire world into a lie when they put bombs inside the World Trade Center and blew up the World Trade Center, and then blamed it on brown people with scary religions living in caves. Never forget that this entire United States 2-decade-long so-called campaign on terror started with a lie, started with a false flag terrorist attack on U.S. soil that killed almost 3,000 people. And this was not Osama bin Laden, and this was not some rogue terrorist cell, and this was not refugees, and this was not Afghanistan or Pakistan. This was Dick Cheney, the CIA, and a very high up, very powerful group of people at the top of Western government and world government that created these psychological operation false flag attacks for profit and for control. So we need to come from a place of truth when we talk about how these wars waged against innocent children for having different religions. We need to remember how these wars started, which was based on lies about Islam and lies about who attacked us. So we see a lot from both sides of the corporate fascist media today, from the Breitbarts and from the MSNBCs, all hanging their heads about this terror, about this bombing that this bombing that whenever these things come into the news, it just gives these establishment war lovers the chance to feel proud about themselves and to push for more and more war and more killing and more war profiteering. We see people and MSNBC, and this is, of course, what the corporate democratic establishment media did as well during the attack in Orlando, the shooting in Orlando by the U.S. citizen. This is the same type of sensationalism we see with this. Constant media coverage about how people of Islam are so evil and violent, and how refugees are so evil and violent. And then we turn around to the white Christian mosque shooter in Canada, or the U.S. white service member, and in the airport a few months ago, we see these attacks by white nationalists and Christians. We see these reports in the corporate media fade into nothing and are never reported on, and that go away. And then we see that false flag attacks like 9/11 blamed on Islam. We see this in the news for almost 2 decades now, almost 20 years, that the 9/11 corporate sensationalist media has been milking this false flag attack to justify the owners of the corporate media going into 8 countries and killing millions and millions of people, and displacing and destroying the lives and the nations of millions more. We really want to come from a place of truth when we talk about realistic solutions to the problem. And we have, on the other side, we have the Breitbart Republican establishment sensationalist media doing nothing but ramping up sensationalism for the refugees in Europe and the refugees in the United States, and the ramping up sensationalism against these people who the United States has created this crisis. And the United States, the wealthiest country on the history of the world, could easily fix these problems, fix the refugee crisis, fix the governments that we've destroyed in the Middle East. But of course, it's not the United States' intention to do that, because the United States' intention is to profit off of the perpetual Orwellian warfare in the Middle East. There's a reason why the United States did all of this, and there's a reason why the United States perpetuate nothing but Islamophobia, while the actual statistics show us that these types of terrorism are proportional across the world, and they are 100% the cause of poverty and invasion and occupation and the subject of United States imperialist rule. So the main creation of, and again, we'll talk about where am I getting all this information from about terrorism. We look at Noam Chomsky, and we look at Chris Hedges, and we look at Abby Martin, and we look at Lee Camp, and we look at the stories they have run. Chomsky has reported for years and years and years about how the statistics show that the United States and United States imperialism we are the biggest terrorists in the world, and as well as being the creators of terrorism that might exist in Middle Eastern countries. The United States is responsible for the hacking of elections and the toppling of democratically elected governments, and the drone warfare and the bombing campaigns. The United States and the West are the terrorists, is what Chomsky and Hedges point out. We have a government and a shadow world elitist government that has the sole intention of profiting the 1% leadership of that government, which is the war industrialists and the oil barons and the weapons manufacturers and the defense manufacturers and the surveillance manufacturers and the military industrial manufacturers, the military weapons and vehicles and all these things. We know very, very, very clearly that the United States is the cause for all of this instability in the world. Not just from, obviously invading countries and destabilizing entire regions. Yes, we know this and we see this, but it's also through the deep state and the shadow government controlled deep state that, whenever they can't just go into a country and bomb, they will manipulate elections, like we're seeing even in France and in Europe, and they'll topple democratically elected regimes like all over Central and South America, all over Eastern Europe, all throughout the Middle East and Africa, and they'll prop up these their fascist puppet leaders, especially in Saudi Arabia, which is a complete United States Western imperialist puppet, and Israel as well. But we see the United States as the clear aggressor, as Hedges and Abby Martin point out, with all of this evidence compiled about the United States propping up these banana republics and these puppet governments that do the bidding of the United States, do the bidding of the world oil interests and the whatever resources those whichever nations are known for. Of course, we have oil and fossil fuels in the Middle East. We have minerals and other resources in Africa where we've done this, and so much. But it's really it's very clear that the United States is the threat to democracy, not say a criminal in Pakistan who will kill people because of anger and resentment and hatred for Western imperialism and Western fascism. So the corporate media that is now sensationalizing this attack in Pakistan, they do a disservice by not by propping up these lone wolf criminals in Pakistan and as well in Quebec City. I mean, the corporate media will automatically paint the Quebec shooter as a lone wolf, as of course, we don't want to blame all Donald Trump supporters or all Christians for what happened, because it's not all of those people's faults in the same way that a radicalized person of Islam, a lone wolf radical in Pakistan will blow himself up. It's the same exact thing. Just take out the United States imperialist influence that has turned Pakistan into a fascist puppet state, because the United States toppled whatever chance they had for democracy decades ago and continued to hold these countries down and subjugate these countries and steal their resources for their own profit. So we see very clearly that what has happened in Pakistan, the tragedy, is lone wolf, as well as what happened in Quebec. But not even to mention false flag. And I'm not just talking about false flag bombings and IED blasts all throughout the Middle East. I'm talking about false flags in the West that go on as well. What is the real evidence that we're getting from this attack in Pakistan? We're getting information out of the State Department and out of the U.S. government, who we know from journalists like Hedges and Chomsky are usually more dishonest than they are honest. So even taking the word of the U.S. government as to what actually happened in Pakistan, we need to take, of course, with a grain of salt. And I've been arguing with a lot of Alex Jones watchers, people who are for Donald Trump and believe, understand things about false flag terror. But the big hypocrisy with some of these info warriors is that for years and years and years, especially during Bush and also during Obama, a lot of these info warriors were they would always be skeptical of the terrorist, quote unquote terrorist reports coming out of our government about the crime being committed in the Middle East. But now that Trump is president, a lot of them are just willing to eat up what the State Department says and what the government says. And you need to remember that for we'll be honest about Donald Trump to his supporters. He is different than a lot of the establishment people we've had before. But the Alex Jones people who are now totally going along with the Republican establishment neocon views on what to do with ISIS in Syria, and even Donald Trump has even called for ramping up of killing in order to stop in order to stop the suicide bombing and the crime, which we know doesn't work, which we know just creates more of it, and on purpose. It's not an accident. But we see the info warriors now going completely hypocritical, but going completely refugees are evil and the people of the Middle East are evil and we need to bomb them and we need to ban them, when like 5 or 10 years ago these same people would be very skeptical out of terror reports coming out of the Bush regime or the Obama regime, as they should be. We're not just supposed to, and of course I'm saying there was an attack in Pakistan and all of these people were killed. We know this is not what we're denying, but we're questioning and we're being always very critical of the U.S. government's propaganda, because we know they lie more than they tell the truth, especially under Obama. But we want to be skeptical about where these blasts and bombs come from in these impoverished countries that are invaded by the biggest, strongest, most bomb sufficient military in the world, who we know commits false flag terrorism all the time. 9/11. Think about every fucking war we've ever been in. The United States has launched false flag terrorist attacks. All of them. Desert Storm, World War II, Vietnam, World War I, Spanish Civil War. It goes on and on and on. This is not just how the United States starts wars. This is how power interests for all of history have started wars. You make another. You make you create the other, and you sensationalize about the other, and then you lead all these people in a campaign to profit off of warfare and to distract from, whatever power interests are trying to distract from. And in the case of 2017 United States, it's to distract from the fact that United States democracy and all of the democracies of the world have been hijacked by globalist oligarchs, elitists, who are looking to profit for as ever how long as they can off of this corporate fascist state until nothing, until exponential growth is what a lot of these people believe, and the depopulation of 90% of the earth is what a lot of these people believe and want. And when we just go with the corporate media's sensationalized bullshit lies about Islam, we help the real terrorists, which are the global elitists, which seems to be something that the Alex Jones people seem to be forgetting. Even though, despite the fact even Donald Trump was against the Iraq War, but we want to see it for what it is. We live in a corporate fascist state that utilizes false flag terrorism all of the time to create these frenzied panics of so the corporatists can grab more and more power. We always want to be skeptical about the information that the United States and the corporate media is putting out, especially when it comes to sensationalizing the need for warfare that in reality just creates more crime and refugees and violence throughout the world. It's not refugees protesting and in some cases creating violence and property damage. It's of course not the fault of any of these people, and to assume that any of these immigrants who are powerless and who are as Martin Luther King said, a riot is the voice of the unheard. Of course these people are going to riot when they're being treated like cattle and being treated like second class and unhuman by the entirety of the corporate media, and therefore about a huge percentage of brainwashed Republican lovers and Democrat lovers and establishment lovers in the U.S. and throughout the world. We want real change in our foreign policy, and we know flat out, reported in credible news outlets all over the world, Chomsky, Hedges, Abby Martin, we see that the U.S. plans of imperialism and militarization, these are the causes of of the type of suicide bombing
Stay to the
crime,
left.
as
Then
it
turn
always
left
has
on
been.
Grafton Road.
Again, it was never Irish people's fault or the fault of people in the Irish for,
Turn left on Grafton Road.
you know, it was never the fault of the Irish for the crimes committed against British imperialist occupation. It was, of course, the fault of British imperialist occupation, and it is the same thing. It's not the fault of a Pakistani or an Islam or a Muslim. It's the fault of United States imperialist occupation. It is not the fault of an Irish Christian who is radicalized against the British, and it is not the fault of a Pakistani Muslim radicalized against the United States. And we know these. We know this very, very, very clearly. We see this all throughout history, and you know, there never seems to really be a problem with a lot of other cases of terrorism throughout history, of people realizing that it had to do with the you know, the governing rule that was subjugating these people who became radicalized. Of course, it's the fault of the people who create the conditions, like the United States. Of course, it's our fault for what we've done based on corporate media psyops about sensationalizing and lying about Islam. You know, 9/11 was the big thing they needed. Obviously, the big thing that got them into all of these into all of these nations, and you know, we see that, and we see how well false flag psychological operations really work. We've been in these countries for almost 2 decades. We will soon be going into Iran. You know, McCain and all of these neocons and all of these neoliberals are foaming at the mouth. And I don't know if, you know, it's Donald Trump's big goal to stop a war with Iran. I don't know what Donald Trump believes. I know that, you know, I watch a lot of Alex Jones talking about what's going on in Donald Trump's head, and you know, Alex Jones describes Donald Trump as, you know, being surrounded by snakes. And there, you know, there's a lot of truth to that. These Republican establishment toadies all around him, and these corporate media fake libertarian and fake right-wing politics, completely corporate fascist you know, media controllers, and you know, all of these other power controllers around Trump, trying to influence Trump, and we see how complicated it is. This is the exact reason, you know, we don't want to go wah Donald Trump all day long, because, you know, Donald Trump is just a small part of the problem. And, you know, in many cases, Donald Trump could be an ally of the people. You know, I think we see the attacks on the corporate media surrounding Donald Trump. I think if we were able to form our people's revolution against this corporate media sensationalism, you know, Donald Trump could become, you know, one of our best allies. I think, if we can get, you know, a large part of this, yeah, especially the Alex Jones people, and the, you know, the people who speak a lot of truth, and we have a lot of disagreements with and things like that. But the Alex Jones people can speak a lot of truth about false flags and about globalism and about the corporate elitist stranglehold on the democracies of the world. We can really goad Donald Trump into working for us if we can form a people's revolution to show that Donald Trump doesn't need to be the puppet of this corporate partisan game, and that he can actually have some power against these people who are constantly defaming him on CNN and everywhere. I tend to doubt any of this will happen, but we want to talk about coming together, but
In 600 feet,
coming together from a place of truth, understanding the fact that the United States are the biggest terrorists in the world, and that Islam
900 feet,
has literally
turn left on
nothing to
Grafton
do
Street.
with
Then at the roundabout, take
any
the
of these
fourth
crimes.
exit.
The same way Christianity and conservatism had nothing to do with what happened in Quebec and all the other crime that gets blamed on
Turn left. Then
cases
at
like
the
this.
roundabout, take the fourth exit on Grafton Street.
But we see but first we need to come together and come from a place of truth, which is understanding that the U.S. imperialist regime has destroyed the world, and it is not going to be stopped or fixed by going along with the Democratic Party or going along with the same bullshit that put us here in the first place. But we see this attack in Pakistan, and just automatically where people are calling for more war. We need to go to Iran. We need to do this. We need to do that. And just people eating up the false information because I guess they just have never done the research of understanding that, we go into Iran, we create worse and worse conditions. We create the conditions if we go into Iran to have an actual 9/11 in the country, which is to say, a major attack perpetrated by radicalized people of the countries we've been bombing. Of course, 9/11 was committed by the U.S. government, but we need to end these wars, and we need to end these bombings, and we need to help the Middle East and the rest of the world rebuild. That the United States has a responsibility and an obligation for what it has done to the world and what we allowed them to do through, going along with sensationalized media about lies about Islam. We need to own up to the how everyone in the United States and in the West is responsible for this what went down over these past 2 decades, which is imperialist terrorist warfare based on lies about a religion and groups of people who did nothing to us, and killing innocent children who they're innocent children. What else do you say? But of course you can't say any of this within the corporate media, or you're labeled as a crazy person. But we just see a lot of hypocrisy and cognitive dissonance coming from especially the right of these Alex Jones people who on one hand want to sensationalize refugees and lies about refugee crime, which is, almost non-existent, and radical Islamic crime, which is also basically non-existent. The conditions that created are, again, poverty and occupation, but we just have this cognitive dissonance that the world is controlled by global corporate regime that creates these destabilized situations based on lies, which is the truth, but we have it matched with the Trumpian cognitive dissonance of the refugees and the immigrants and the people with no power having also being the exact same cause. It's just complete cognitive dissonance of what they say. It's just ridiculous. But we know the good proverb of there's three people sitting at a table: a banker, a worker, and an immigrant. And there are 20 cookies on the table, and the banker takes 19 of the cookies and then tells the worker, "Oh, you better be careful of that immigrant, or he'll take your one cookie." We know who the bastards are in this situation, and it is no immigrant, and it is no working person of Pakistan, and it is no person who is the victim of United States imperialist warfare and occupation that is the problem, is the cause of any of these problems in the world. Of course, in that situation, it's the banker and the banker's ability to trick the worker, and the average Western person. Of course, it's the rich person who's playing this trick before our eyes with Bush and then Obama, and hopefully we can come together and move Trump toward peace. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I think what we need most of all is communication, especially with some pretty woke and intelligent conservative people, libertarian people. Very, very, I mean, if we're talking, I know so many conservatives, libertarians, anarchists, even Republicans, and especially a lot of Donald Trump supporters who are very intelligent, but who are just like the left wing, the fake left wing people of this country who go along with the fake left wing media. They're so brainwashed by constant echo chamber corporate media, partisan hackery media, that just both sides sensationalize Islam and the refugee crisis, but then they're just pitted against each other for all different silly, nonsensical kind of reasons. And it's our goal as a people's movement to break that paradigm of being othered and being divided. We want civil communication and the exchange of ideas and the agreement on facts and of what the statistics show us and what history shows us and what about where terrorism comes from, and it's from United States imperialism. That's the fact. That's what the corporate media won't tell you, and that's exactly what's happening, folks. Reported these types of statistics and these types of stories, reported, all throughout time. And we blame Islam, and we sensationalize Islam, and it's disgusting and it's wrong. So we need to form an independent people's movement against this corporate state that is lying and the actual ones spreading the violence. And we need to stop their violence, and we need to protect the innocent people of these Muslim nations that we're destroying because we have more power and military might. We need a huge paradigm shift, folks, away from these lies. And we need to stop worshiping the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, and we need to move to worshiping our ideas and worshiping facts that Islam is not violent and dangerous. United States unchecked imperialism, rampant exponential growth imperialism is the dangerous one. So, in conclusion, the United States are the biggest terrorists in the world, and Islam is just a religion that has nothing to do with anything by way of violence. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening. Please like and share and comment and retweet and do whatever to this video. And I am Sandy Frank, and I will see you in the next one.